and F you if you can't handle the truth. This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever. Not a close second. And I've known him for years. The Brzezinskis have known him for 50 years. If it weren't the truth, I wouldn't say it.
You can't handle the truth. Good morning. Rise in freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show on the 4 Liberty Network. The Biden cover-up. To what extent did the media play in covering up Joe Biden's cognitive decline? Apparently, Biden aides were discussing using a wheelchair for him if he were re-elected. Joe Biden's physical deterioration was so severe in 2023 and 2024 that advisors privately were discussing the possibility they'd have to pull an old FDR. December 7th, 1944, and the day I will have an infamy. Cripple Christ, as we like to joke. Welcome to the Wake Up America show. I'm your host, Austin Peterson. Click that like button. We've got some great guests for you today. Nice to see John Rail, Bruce Burtwhistle, T-Mill22, Caleb Vanderfelt, Grizz Cheese. Her's mommy's back. Everybody, let's give her a pat on the back. What's up, Cecilia? Everybody's checking out the new For Liberty over at forlibertyshop.com. Yes, the delicious For Liberty. How's my microphone today? Good? Bad? Swapped out the boards. Hopefully today's audio will be better. Just a quick heads up before we get into the show today. I want to remind you all a couple of things. One, bonus content open, available, ready to make sweet love to you. Don't forget, if we hit that $75 Rumble Rant donation total or purchases like tea from the shop, if we hit $75 by the end of the show, you'll unlock the bonus content. And also don't forget that tomorrow and Friday there will be no show. So, yeah. Yes, no show tomorrow. So, and no show tomorrow and no show Friday. I will be in Los Angeles for the premiere of a movie that I am in. I have a tiny little part. I'm not like going to get famous from it or anything, but I'm going to be there with the filmmakers and the rest of the cast. The movie's called Killing Mary Sue. You can find information about it on the IMDb, and it got picked up. So it should be coming to a theater near you this summer. So keep an eye out for that. I also just scored tickets to see Bill Maher, Real Time with Bill Maher. So I don't know if we have any Bill Maher fans out there, but if you guys are into Bill Maher and you watch the show this week, if you hear clapping or applauding or thing like that, and it sounds mysteriously like Austin on the Bill Maher show, that's gonna be me. I got a ticket to the studio audience. I've always wanted to see a taping of the show, so. Keep an eye out this weekend. If you got HBO Max and you're watching and listening to, and you're like, that sounds suspiciously like that mustachioed man, AP. So that's what I'll be doing on Friday. But Saturday night's the premiere, and then I'll be back next Monday. So now that we got the house cleaning out of the way, let's get the other house cleaning out of the way. We got Judge Napolitano this morning at 8 a.m. Central Time. We're going to talk to him a little bit about habeas corpus. Show me the body. Show me your body, baby. Judge Napolitano will talk to us about habeas corpus. We'll talk to him about accepting a $400 million jet from Qatar. He's also Trump is in the Middle East. We're going to talk to him about potential peace deals, Trump's repudiation of the neocons while he's there, nation building, et cetera, et cetera. Should be a great conversation at 8 a.m. Central Time. So if you guys are interested in hearing from Judge Napolitano, but say you're pressed for time today, but you really want to hear that interview, just make sure to set an appointment to come back a little bit less than an hour from now, 8 a.m. Central, 7:07 here now, Central Time in Jefferson City, Missouri. So come back and join us live for the Judge Napolitano interview at 8 a.m. Central Time. At 8:30 a.m. Central Time, I think it's his second appearance on the show. I'm looking forward to hearing from Brian Eskow. He's going to join us at 8:30 a.m. Central Time. Brian Eskow, he has a podcast called Searching for Political Identity, kind of like a former leftist formerly Democrat, I would say. Leftist I used for like people who are like dedicated to like the principles of socialism and wokeism, et cetera, et cetera. But Brian Eskow, he's, we've been doing each other's podcasts and talking online. And yesterday he did this long discussion about what is the woke right. And every time I open X these days, I mean, I roll your eyes like I do whenever I see woke right, woke right, woke right, woke right. It's every time I'm scrolling my feed, people are talking about the woke right this, the woke right that. And James Lindsay is beefing with Tim Pool, and the Groypers are beefing with the Babylon Bee guys and stuff. They're all fighting over this, but it seems like nobody really knows what it is, what it means, unless you're James Lindsay or Tim Pool, or you're trying to score points. But Brian Eskow, who's kind of like, it's just, I don't know, just more moderate. Like, I know that people are like, ooh, boo, down with the squishy moderates. But don't you every once in a while just want to hear from normal people what they think? People who are just not like us, who are so saturated with these things, like Nazi, fascists, KKK. Let's hear from somebody who I would consider to be something a little bit more normal. But if you're in politics, you're a little bit weird. And if you watch the Wake Up America show, you're quite weird. So click the like button, weirdos. There's no normies here. So at 8:30 today, we've got Brian S. Gallus. Has everybody got it? So 8 a.m. Central Time, we've got Judge Napolitano talking about the Middle East, talking about neocons, talking about Trump's plane and habeas corpus. And then at 8:30, we got Brian Eskow. But first, we're up on the docket. We're going to talk about Biden's cognitive decline and the extent to which the media covered it up. And then we're going to talk about whether or not artificial intelligence is our children learning due to artificial intelligence. We'll talk about the story of a teacher who famously quit. Her TikTok went viral where she said that the kids is not learning. Is our children learning? No, our children is not learning. And she blames AI. So we're going to talk about how education is changing this morning. It's going to be a fantastic show. Buckle up, grab yourself a box of Founding Flavors coffee or For Liberty. Unlock that bonus content while we get the show rocking and rolling, and let's do it. Let's get the show rolling.
I'm just curious as to whether or not this kind of trying to hide what was happening with the president at the time had an impact on the press corps. Like, why didn't we hear some of these details from what they actually saw and were dealing with trying to get information?
Well, Alex Thompson and I were on the case, as were lots of other reporters, trying to figure out what was going on behind the scenes. But the bottom line is the White House was lying, not only to the press, not only to the public, but they were lying to members of their own cabinet. They were lying to White House staffers. They were lying to Democratic members of Congress, to donors about how bad things had gotten. And in fact, Alex and I started writing this book after the election of 2024, and we spoke with more than 200 people, almost all of whom were Democrats. And almost all of whom wouldn't be honest with us or wouldn't be candid with us until after the election. No. And then after the election, we found out all of these things that when you looked at what was going on with President Biden at the time, it probably doesn't surprise you the extent to which he was deteriorating. But now we have anecdotes and facts about what was really going on behind the scenes with details that Democrats wouldn't share with us until after Election Day.
Wow. Let me tell you something. He's lying. Okay, he's lying. Hey. Because you can say what you like. He's not stupid, right? They didn't want Donald Trump to win the election, and so therefore all of the press, which is captured by the Democratic Party, they were doing everything they could to pretend like they weren't seeing anything. La 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 la. I'm not listening. Na 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 na. Right? It's all fake. Jake Tapper was one of the biggest con artists who was covering this all up, and now he wants to write a book about it. Right? Now he wants to come out and say, "Oh, well, they lied to us." Well, here's the thing. Of course they lied to you, right? Like it's some revelation we're hearing from Jake Tapper that the White House might be lying to you. They're always lying to you. Republican, Democrat, doesn't matter. It's always the government. That's what it does. It traffics it. Everything the state says is a lie, and everything it has stolen. Thank you, Friedrich Nietzsche. How is it that I, average Joe, saw through the lies, but the entire journalist staff at CNN did not catch on? Great point. Now, CNN anchor Jake Tapper, who we just heard from, he's co-authored a new book called Original Sin, President Biden's Decline, Its Cover-Up, and the Disastrous Choice to Run Again. Roll tape.
How do you think it makes little kids with stutters feel when they see you make a comment like that?
It's very clearly a cognitive decline.
Okay.
That's what I'm referring to. It makes me uncomfortable.
You are
to
no
watch somebody on stage
I can't.
search for
This is so amazing.
questions
It's so amazing to me that
and try and figure out an answer.
a cognitive decline.
President Biden embraces his stutter, talking about it, while Trump mocks it, exaggerates it, belittles it. He's sharp physically. I mean, mentally.
Yeah.
I think the question is physically, right?
Right.
More so?
Right.
Right. And the guy who's his chief opponent is only 3 or 4 years younger than him.
Exactly.
I mean, you have questioned President Biden's age, mental fitness, ability to lead. Of those supporting Biden, you said, quote, "Shame on all of you pretending everything is okay. You're leading us and him into a disaster." Do you worry that you damaged him at all? I don't doubt that you got hugs and handshakes behind closed doors today, and maybe even publicly, some of them because they like you personally. But I've heard a lot of really nasty stuff about you from your Democratic colleagues. Sure. I mean, just like, what is he thinking? Exercise in narcissism. I mean, false claims to the Wall Street Journal about President Biden's mental fitness and acuity. He's 81, and his memory, it doesn't seem great. It's not horrible, but I don't understand the outrage. Quote, behind closed doors, Biden shows signs of slipping, unquote. The Wall Street Journal is owned by News Corp, which is run by the Murdochs. Beyond the headline, there is some critical nuance here. The article is mostly based on observations of Republicans, with former Speaker Kevin McCarthy the only one going on the record. They do note in the article that most of the criticism comes from Republicans. Have you heard any concerns from anyone who has met with President Biden about him seeming a little slower?
No.
The Russians are trying to make us and the public not trust our election integrity. Joe Biden has dementia, all this stuff.
Now, that's CNN anchor Jake Tapper. Thank you to Nancy. She went over to For Liberty Shop and bought a bag of tea. That puts us $17.76 towards our goal to unlock the bonus content today. So once we hit 75, we'll play that instead of commercials. So hopefully we'll try and hit it before 8 a.m. Within the next 45 minutes, so that way we can watch the bonus content instead of commercials when I go to get the guests. But back to the topic, CNN anchor Jake Tapper authoring this new book, Original Sin, President Biden's Decline, Its Cover-Up, and His Disastrous Choice to Run Again. As viewers of The Lead know, he writes, I've been covering the concerns about President Biden's age and health for years. You guys were paying attention during that clip, right? The one we just watched? He's been covering it for years. I literally asked him about it in October of 2022, and we've challenged Democrats and White House officials about it. Please! Are we gonna let them rewrite this history? Are we just gonna let this go by?
The White House press secretary used the phrase cheap fakes, the idea of cheap fakes. Let me explain what that is.
Oh, yeah, everybody remember the cheap fakes, right? All the edited clips that make Biden look like he's experiencing cognitive decline. Remember the cheap fakes?
We've been worried for years about AI deep fakes, that computer-generated images are going to trick people into believing something that's totally false. Cheap fakes are a little bit simpler. They're cheap. They're just distorted, out-of-context videos, chopped up in certain ways, constructed in certain ways. That's what we're seeing. That's what the Biden administration, the Biden campaign is so worried about right now. But make no mistake, they are worried about this. This is a real problem. This is not some made-up fiction. The videos are oftentimes made up, but the problem is real. The White House.
Cheap fakes. Everybody remembers the cheap fakes. Yes. Thank you, CNN. Concerns over Biden's age and his stamina go back as far as 2019 as he ran in the Democratic primary. The subject wasn't just raised by conservatives, though, at the time. It was actually used by some of his Democratic rivals like Julian Castro and Cory Booker. At the time, they were casting doubt on the former VP's sharpness, and they received no end of hell of trouble from their fellow Democrats for daring to mention the truth of what was obvious. But once Biden clinched the nomination in 2020 during the COVID pandemic, he ran what many dubbed the basement campaign. Does everybody remember the basement campaign? This was a name meant to signify that, Biden's limited public appearances on the campaign trail due to the fears that, Joe Biden might get COVID-19. And legitimate fears, right? It was called the boomer remover in 2020. We didn't know much about it at the time. So everybody, anybody who was over a certain age had a legitimate fear that something like that might happen to them at that time. So, of course, Joe Biden goes bunker mode and it didn't arise as much ire. But when, of course, 2024 came around, that's when things really started to change. But in October of 2020, Jake Tapper was out there touting the Biden's talking points. He was showing a clip from the DNC convention of a 13-year-old Biden supporter who had a severe stutter, who turned to the Democratic nominee for inspiration during a tense exchange with that Laura Trump, that video that I showed you guys earlier. That's when he was like making it all out as if, oh, wow, how dare you, right? All this outrage. They knew what was going on.
How do you think it makes little kids with stutters feel when they see
if you're attacking Joe Biden, then you're literally attacking children with stutters. See, this is how the press plays shield maiden for the Democratic Party. This is what you're not just attacking Joe Biden, you're attacking children with stutters.
How do you think it makes little kids with stutters feel when they see you make a comment like that?
It's very clearly a cognitive decline.
Okay.
That's what I'm referring to. It makes me uncomfortable.
Okay, so you hate children.
You are I can't. That's so amazing. It's so amazing to me that
try and figure out an answer.
A cognitive decline. President Biden embraces his stutter.
Look, did you notice the outrage that he felt? Right. So that's an activist's outrage. That's not a reporter reporting on something like that. That's an activist outrage. Look, I got so many millions of clips here. Here's activist. This is activism. Not this. He's doing a very good job of pretending as if this is reporting, but this is activism. Watch this clip from 1982.
Concern about rising temperatures on planet Earth heated up a hearing here in Washington today. For years, scientists have theorized about the dangers of the so-called greenhouse effect.
Oh, they've theorized, and they got well paid for it.
The warming of the Earth's atmosphere due to the burning of coal and oil. And in recent months, as David Culhane reports, research has uncovered facts to support that theory.
Many scientists claim that the temperature of the Earth's atmosphere has been rising over the past 100 years, that the great sheets of pack ice in Antarctica are melting at a much more rapid rate than previously.
And now we found out that the Arctic ice is actually increasing. Did you guys read?
And finally, that the sea level has been rising with increasing swiftness over the past 40 years.
This is activism. This is not journalism.
If these scientists are correct, about 25% of Florida would be flooded, along with low-lying areas all over the world. Climate changes could produce widespread disruption of agriculture. The American farm belt might be too dry, and the wheat and corn crops would have to move to Canada. Scientists blame the odorless, colorless carbon dioxide gas for these potentially dangerous changes around the planet. It is the greenhouse effect. The gas allows sunlight to filter down and warm the Earth. But like the glass of a greenhouse, the carbon dioxide tends to trap heat so that it cannot rise into space. The scientists maintain that the...
Does anybody else remember all this fear-mongering? Thank you, Cecilia, by the way, for the $5 donation. We're now $22, I think, ish. Yeah, 22-ish towards the $75 bonus content goal. Thank you, Cecilia.
Oil and gas we've been burning for 100 years have produced more and more carbon dioxide and helped overheat the Earth. Now, some political leaders endorse the demands for more CO2 monitoring stations, like this one in Hawaii. And they share the anger of the scientists at Reagan administration budget cuts at a time when they feel closer to getting definitive answers.
No, not the Reagan administration budget cuts. No! Here's the man who invented the internet.
We are not doing the kind of research that we should be doing to determine whether or not these scientists who are so alarmed are correct in their assessment.
And what they find out will affect the lives and fortunes of millions of people, the very survival of cities like this one.
That is activism. Boo, idiots. That's not journalism. They're not doing journalism. They're doing activism. And trust me, I know the difference. John Stossel says, despite the protestations from the left that the world is actually getting better, speaking of activists.
Activists say our future is dismal.
We are in the beginning of a mass extinction.
Because I don't have a future.
If it's not climate change, it's homophobia.
It's very stressful. Like, people don't know whether we're going to have rights next year or not.
The activists say they fight to save people from homophobia, racism, hate groups, and climate change. Listening to them, you'd think these threats are getting worse. But the opposite is true. Our air and water are cleaner.
No.
We live longer, healthier lives.
No.
There's less racism than there used to be.
No.
Less homophobia, too. But if the protesters acknowledge that, what would they do with their lives?
Thank you, John.
Journalist John Tierney covered activists for years.
In 1979, I was a reporter at the Washington Star, and I was assigned to cover the first anti-nuclear march.
Thousands protested nuclear power.
An end to the nuclear age in its entirety.
And I interviewed the organizers, and I was just struck that all of them were veterans of the anti-war movement.
Oh.
How did they all suddenly become so passionate and so knowledgeable about nuclear power?
It's the current thing. John Tierney, it's the 1970s version of NPCs who I support the current thing. It's the put the black picture over your profile picture to show that you're a member of Black Lives Matter, that you support Black Lives Matter.
And then it was later I realized, well, of course, the Vietnam War was over.
Yeah.
You know, they succeeded. So they needed to find a new cause.
Thank
For
you.
activists, success is a threat.
For activists, success is a threat. It's true. It's the same with libertarians. There's a lot of libertarians who don't like Javier Milei, specifically in Argentina. A lot of libertarians don't like Javier Milei because he showed them that they suck and that they weren't successful and that their tactics weren't going to advance liberty. And now many libertarians have turned against Javier Milei in Argentina because he hasn't given them cushy government jobs or involved them at all in his coalition. And these are all these libertarian activists who are deeply opposed to Javier, former friends of Javier Milei, who are deeply opposed to him. And it's all because they're jealous because they didn't get positions in government. They weren't part of the victory. And now they're devoted to doing everything they can to take him down. It's like this all over the world.
You know, it's going to put you out of business unless you find a new cause.
But it's not a business. They're not making money doing this.
Oh, yes, they are.
Environmental activists probably collect the most. Their leaders pay themselves
There is if you think about it, and is there money spent to advance the ideals that you and I believe in, right, as liberty lovers here on this show, conservatives and liberty lovers? Yes. Is it anywhere near as much money as environmentalists? I can tell you, I could turn this show into a green environmental buy the supplements, take the gas station boner pill show tomorrow and get so rich because there's so much money churning out there. A lot of NGO money, government money would come into this show if you will advance these leftist ideals.
Hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of dollars. Racial equity groups have gotten rich too. Although when it comes to deceitful self-dealing, Tierney says,
the ultimate example is the Southern Poverty Law Center.
The Southern Poverty Law Center released a chilling report.
When the center opened, it promised legal help to those harmed by racism. After their lawsuits bankrupted chapters of the Ku Klux Klan, the center changed Klan Watch to Hate Watch.
Fabricating these, the idea that there's a rising tide of hate in this country. And they just fundraise with that, and it scares people, and they get money.
And it's effective.
Think they're making the world a better place.
But they're not. They're viciously attacking and smearing.
Groups like Moms for Liberty, Moms for America.
We put about 10 of these major hate groups out of business.
They're just scaremongering and giving people the idea that there's all this hatred and
I have to tell you something, guys. The government is going to shut down the For Liberty shop. I'm sorry to say. Unless you go to forlibertyshop.com right now and buy some For Liberty or some of our delicious Founding Flavors coffee, we are going to go out of business. Yes. And it'll be your fault. The world will come to an end if you don't go to forlibertyshop.com right now. That's the number 4, libertyshop.com, and support the cause of liberty. The tides will rise. Missouri will be underwater. And you will have forcible, mandatory vaccinations for you, your nephews, your cousins, your childs. Your soul will burn in hell for all eternity if you do not give me money. Go to forlibertyshop.com. Millions will die. And here's the thing. You can stop all this right now. You can stave off the end of times. The end of the apocalypse can be stopped for a small payment of $17.76 a month. You just go to forlibertyshop.com and you can be absolved of your sins. Just by buying a Gulf of America beach towel, or perhaps something from our Gulf of America collection, like a t-shirt. The shark hats are super popular right now. I don't know what happened, but yesterday 4 people bought these things. They don't want the apocalypse to happen. Do you? How dare you? Unlock that bonus content, guys. Go to forlibertyshop.com, or millions, billion, trillions of people will die.
Oh, these kids are coming.
Excuse me.
What's up?
Elementary school students.
Okay.
We study English now. May
Cool.
I interview you?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you very much. We ask 3 questions.
Okay.
What's your name?
Coleman. Did I spell that? How do you spell it?
Where are you from?
America? United States?
America.
Ever been there? You been there?
I'm from Shiga.
Oh, okay.
Japanese Shiga. What Japanese food do you like?
Oh, this one.
Thank you very much.
That's it?
Sign please.
Okay. Nice to meet you guys.
This is thank you gift.
Oh, cool. What is that, crane?
Samurai hat.
Oh, okay, cool. Whoa, what is this, a dragon?
That was actually the crane. Stupid Americans, come on, man. He saw the samurai hat, thought it was a crane. He saw the crane, thought it was a dragon. That's why America's going to hell in a handbasket. Is AI ruining education? One teacher says it's already too late. Thank you to Andy Opperman for the averting of the apocalypse. We've almost averted the apocalypse today. But right now we've raised $45 towards the $75 goal. All we have to do is raise $75 by the end of the show and the apocalypse will be averted. But for now, you're all killing the planet, and how dare you? A fired up teacher just quit her job and took to TikTok to blast artificial intelligence and iPads for destroying education. Is she right? Are we raising a generation that can't read, write, or care? Let's dig in. So Hannah Maria, she's a high school English teacher, self-described older Gen Z. She quit her job, posted it on TikTok, went viral, and here were some of her major claims. She says that kids can't read because they rely on AI to read to them. Okay, and guilty. Totally have done this before, right? I've got something that I need to consume, but I have to be doing something else, and it's multitasking, right? Task switching is what people say, but I have to listen to something rather than like read it necessarily because I have to be typing or doing something else, right? But kids are doing this now, and they're not necessarily even doing something else. Maybe they are. Maybe they're playing video games, which sounds like a really fun way to like learn about your assignment, right? The kids can't read apparently, in part because they're relying on AI to read to them. So they're not flexing their muscles by actually reading because they just have AI read it all out loud to them, right? Apparently attention spans, which have been declining for decades, are shot. Students just scroll past anything that they don't like. And apparently this teacher claims that her students would actually throw tantrums if they had to write anything by hand. Hannah Maria also claims that students just say that ChatGPT will do it for me instead of learning. This is what's happening in our classrooms right now. She believes schools should ban smart devices until college. And she says that AI isn't helping, it's replacing learning. Love to hear your thoughts on this. You can text the show. And everybody say goodbye to Nancy. She has to take off. Nancy, thank you for dropping by. We hope you will see you again. Remember, I'm not in tomorrow or Friday, but I'll be back next week. If you'd like to weigh in on this, if you want to do more than just drop a comment below, then all you have to do is send me a text at 573-319-1586. That's 573-319-1586 is the text line, and you can text me anytime at that number, night or day. Got a question about your For Liberty shop order? Send us a text. Want to suggest a guest for the show? Send us a text. That's a great way to get in touch with us, and it doesn't even have to be when we're live. You can send us a text message anytime at 573-319-1586. So do you think that tech is helping kids learn or just making them lazy? I saw the comment on the feed earlier that was saying that, oh, well, the typewriter was making it so that kids weren't learning to read or write back in the day. I think that was Drew Van Runkle, which is an interesting point. But I wonder, though, if this isn't necessarily, an apples and oranges comparison. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. I mean, technology, I think, can be a big helper for kids to learn. But I can also see how if you have to read a 1,000-page book, you just dropping it into ChatGPT and getting they could just get the book on tape, right? I mean, books on tape have always existed. They could always just go to the YouTube video. But are we talking about like every assignment that they have, their piece of homework, they have it done? Can you imagine how nice how nice it must be, though? I mean, for these kids, even though they're probably suffering for it. And again, we won't know for a little bit. Until we get a little bit more longitudinal studies on how AI is changing the educational environment. But can you imagine being a kid and being able to just go to ChatGPT and have it do your assignments and your homework and you're done? You can just go outside and play or do whatever it was you want with the kids. God, that would have been amazing. But here's the deal. So the data actually backs up this teacher's claim, right? So the nation's report card called the NAEP shows that reading scores for 13-year-olds hit their lowest point in over 30 years. So 1 in 3 students in the United States cannot read at a basic level for their age. This is a real crisis. The Seattle Children's Research Institute showed that teens spend apparently 6+ hours per school day on devices, but not on school work. So they're in class and they're on their devices and they're not doing schoolwork. 6 hours. I mean, how many hours is school? Right? I don't remember. It was like, what was it when you guys were in school? I remember they like shortened our days back in the day when they went to like blocks. What was it when they changed, when they all of a sudden we'd have classes for 2 hours instead of an hour? You'd have like, instead of having like 6 or 7 classes a day, you'd have like 2 to 4 classes a day, like 4 classes a day, and they would just make the class longer and you'd switch off per day. I can't remember what they called that. Stanford study in 2023 says that students given iPads performed worse in comprehension tasks than those using print books. Another study, OECD study in 2023, said heavy tech use negatively correlates with academic performance, especially in reading. Teachers nationwide are seeing a steep drop in handwriting skills, reliance on AI tools for essays and homework, and a lack of engagement even in creative or discussion-based tasks. So here's a question for the audience. Should schools go back to textbook and paper, at least until high school? I've seen some professors and academic types on X talking about this problem in recent weeks. I think I saw one yesterday, a really big thread from professors talking about how they've had to completely change how they check their curriculum, how they grade things with their students, because if they do anything that requires something to be filled out online, then it's not going to, they know that they're going to get AI responses. And some teachers have actually created AI proof exams. And I'm not quite sure, when I was reading it yesterday, I wasn't quite sure exactly how they were able to pull this off, but they had sort of like created questions that would trip AI to sort of, if you just cut and pasted it as it was, the wording of the questions would throw off the artificial intelligence with the prompts, which honestly is kind of brilliant. So teachers are starting to create traps for their students so that their AI gets triggered and gives them a bunch of nonsense and messes it up, right? You can imagine if you had like a word question that, or if you had to like write an essay, and if the first like 2 or 3 or 4 sentences were rather vague or ambiguous, or perhaps were on a completely separate thing entirely, then the second thing is the real question. That, the second part of the paragraph may be the real question. Then in that kind of scenario, perhaps AI prompts might be thrown off, and if you just copied and pasted it, it would be a mess. Grizz Cheese says, I blame removal of cursive writing in schools. Agreed. I'm with him. I do think that it was a mistake to take away cursive writing in schools. I think that because that was really the beginning of saying, oh, well, we don't really need this aspect of handwriting. And I know that people are going to be like, oh, well, technology changes. Yes, I get that. Why is Grover Cleveland trending on X, one of the most libertarian presidents in history? Oh, it's because they're attacking Trump over the statue, the gift of the Statue of Liberty. Okay, it's Ann Coulter. Okay, yeah, I'll talk about that when I get Judge Napolitano on here in about 20 minutes, which we will have the judge here in 20 minutes. And we are so close to unlocking the bonus content, guys. We want to unlock the bonus content before the judge comes on, because then you can watch the bonus content instead of the commercials, which is way more fun. So make sure that you're doing your shopping at forlibertyshop.com during the show, or make those Rumble Rant donations in the chat at rumble.com/AP for Liberty. And if you do, if we hit that $75 before the judge gets here, you'll get to watch the bonus content before the judge, and then I'll replay it before we have Brian Escow at 8:30. So tech is sort of a double-edged sword when it comes to a learning environment, right? There are some pros and there are some cons. Let's go through them. So the pros are obviously easy access to information. If you do need to do legitimate research, like I use it for research for writing my op-eds and my articles, and it's fantastic, right? It's a fantastic research. Sometimes there are very obscure bits of knowledge that I recall, but I need to confirm that my memory is correct. So I need, something that happened during Occupy Wall Street in Zuccotti Park in New York City back in 2010 or 11. And I need to confirm that this incident occurred, that there is documentation that it occurred, and it wasn't just in my memory, and I'm not just hallucinating myself, because like AI, our brains can sometimes hallucinate information or things that didn't happen in the past. We've experienced this. So I use AI sometimes to confirm facts and data and research for things to make sure that my reporting is as accurate and factual as possible. So easy access to information, right? Personalized learning tools. That's also a really useful tool when it comes to AI, personalized learning tools. I have to learn a lot to run this business, this technology business, and to figure out pricing for a box of coffee or a mug, and to keep up with tariffs and changes, and to create all these products and to manage them, and to manage a team, a remote team, and to pay everybody in the network who's getting paid. To manage all this kind of stuff, right? I have to learn a lot. I have to learn constantly how to use AI, how to change things, how to stay ahead of the game. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but we've been creating. I have been doing it, but also Stephanie and Brad Beckman on the For Liberty Network, we've been learning so many new tools thanks to AI. It's a miracle. I don't know if you've been enjoying some of the memes that we've been creating, some of the cartoons that we've been creating, especially in the last week, have really done well and gone viral. Stephanie did a really great one yesterday that went viral. And we have to learn how to use all these tools. And AI can not only show us how to use these tools, but show us how to learn. Where can we go? Like there's for instance, troubleshooting the microphone problems that I was having. Right, ChatGPT can help that. So technology like artificial intelligence, it's a huge benefit to be able to gain access to information faster than a search engine, frequently more accurate than a search engine. And I think students can definitely benefit from that. Maybe it needs to go back to like we had the computer labs, right? Like you just have like a 2-hour block in a day, every other day, that's computers. And that's when you work on laptops, and that's when you work on are using artificial intelligence, and that's when you're learning all these new skills and tools. And maybe you're making TikTok videos, and maybe you're making video like just reels, and maybe you're making memes and making pictures and doing all the fun stuff that has to do with technology. But it's in a block of learning in class, and then everything else is handwritten in cursive. What do you guys think? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Brad's going to lose all his money in gambling because he thinks that because he's up right now with AI and he just started, that he's going to get rich. But Brad, telling you now, bud, don't lose your shirt. Teach students how to gamble. Is that a pro or a con? And of course, things like accessibility features for students with disabilities. I was talking to somebody yesterday about this, the Tesla self-driving cars. That's an AI technology. And an unbelievable benefit. Think about people who are blind, who could never get behind the wheel of a car before and be able to go about their business. Think about senior citizens. Think about your 90-year-old dad or mom who has dementia, and maybe it's only like maybe during sundown, right? Maybe they're a sundowner, like Joe Biden was allegedly a sundowner. And they could get behind the wheel of a vehicle, a car, and you don't have to worry about it because it's self-driving. It just takes them from point A to the grocery store. They get to go have breakfast with the veterans at Hy-Vee and get to have live a normal life, and then go back to the Tesla will take them right back home where they started, and some of them will even plug themselves back in automatically by the time this starts to become a ubiquitous technology. Incredible, amazing. It's going to change people's lives for the better, no doubt, right? So the pros of this technology getting out, more people getting used to it, it's going to be a big help for people who are disabled. And also, students should be learning these things in schools because they need to be prepared for a digital world. They need to understand how this technology works because many of them are going to be operating and working in the digital economy. So we shouldn't all go back to just pens and paper, but that should absolutely be a part of it because when the EMP pulse hits, when Vladimir Putin declares war on the United States and we have a nuclear conflict, and the EMP takes out all of our computers, we're going to need to be able to calculate trajectories of ICBMs that don't have motherboards on them. You know what I'm saying? So those are all the pros. Now let's talk about the cons. Critical thinking is declining. Is our children learning? No. I blame the Department of Education. I blame the public school system, and I blame the government for declining reading, writing, and arithmetic scores. And I think most people watching this would agree. Kids don't build patience or discipline with long-form reading. One of the major reasons that parents bring their kids, I'm a teacher, I teach martial arts. One of the main reasons that their parents bring their kids to martial arts classes, actually classes tonight. So if you're in Jefferson City, kids class at 5:30, adult class at 6:30. So come on out, kick your butt. The kids need discipline, and the parents know this, and they know they're not getting it in school, and so they bring their kids to karate because they want me to yell at their kids for an hour and scare the shit out of them and make them cry. No, not really. But some kids do cry, and I do yell at them. And I love every minute. Didn't Jesus say in the Bible, suffer the children? Pretty sure that's Jesus. Amy J.E. says, off to a meeting. See you all next week. Bye, Amy. Thanks so much for hanging out with us today. So discipline, right? Critical thinking is declining. Kids aren't building up patience or discipline with long-form reading. That's something that I still struggle with is patience. I'm a very impatient person generally. But discipline, not something that I necessarily suffer with as much. However, kids need it. Kids need to learn patience, and they need to learn discipline. They need to learn how to put something into an input, like an investment, and then wait for a long time before they see a return on their investment, right? And they also need to see disappointment when that maybe something that they put in didn't work, that they waited for, and they've got to go back to the drawing board, right? But the cons of artificial intelligence, short-form dopamine-driven apps like TikTok and Instagram make the classrooms feel so much slower because everything that's happening is, blazing speed of light. Scroll, 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 right? And these kids, they get in the classroom and everything is so slow and they can't stand it, right? And they're not getting dopamine hits. Spare the dojo, spoil the child, says Luke Sacker. Amen. You're the best around. Guys, we've got 12 more minutes until Judge Napolitano comes, and we're so close to unlocking the bonus content. Don't you want to watch the bonus content instead of commercials about 7 minutes from now? Make sure you get those Rumble Rant donations in, guys, or go to forlibertyshop.com and make a purchase of delicious founding flavors. Coffee, I recommend, or get yourself a Gulf of America beach towel so we can get that bonus content unlocked. Joni says, did my support end somehow because I'm in white trying to resubscribe but ended up with Rumble Premium? What am I doing wrong? Joni, it's hard to say depending on your technology, your level of technology understanding. But if you joined Rumble Premium, that does mean that you are eligible now to watch the Freedom Arcade, which is on Friday night. So that is a benefit of that. But being a sub to the channel is something a little different. Does anybody want to talk Amy through how you become a subscribing, supporting member of the show itself? If somebody could help her with that, that would be awesome. Isn't it like, it's like not the gifts. Oh, there's a subscribe button. Yeah, there's like a red subscribe button, it says. Right, yeah. So you can become a VIP member of the channel, and then you'll get that little red icon next to your name. And of course, that subscription will go towards unlocking the bonus content as well. Because we're at $45 of $75 raised. So $30 more and we'll unlock that bonus content. Okay, so we're talking about technology. We're talking about AI and how it's changing the classroom. Got to stay on track. ChatGPT dependency is a real phenomenon. Kids type a prompt, get an answer, and then never internalize the lesson. So have you seen how kids are using AI today? Do you think that it helps them learn or skip the process altogether? Send me a text at 573-319-1586. The teacher in this story, Hannah Maria. Thank you, Drew Van Runkle. Take care, Cecilia. Oh, Ashley Ann's back. So what this teacher who quit her job because AI has changed, it made it impossible, she claims, to teach her students. Oh, there's Joni Rickett. There we go, guys. All right, nice. $55 raised towards the $75 goal. So $20 more is all we have to hit to unlock today's bonus content. So what Hannah Maria, this teacher, wants is to ban AI tools and devices for K through 12. I don't know about banning it, but maybe just like limiting it to like computer time would be my idea. Love to hear your thoughts. Oh, Andy just unlocked the bonus content, gifted everybody a bunch of subs. Way to go. Thank you, Andy. So we'll watch the mini documentary instead of commercials when the judge comes up here. But let's finish this segment up. So Hannah Maria, this teacher, says we should bring back textbooks, handwriting, face-to-face interaction, workbooks, and work to rebuild attention spans and comprehension in the classroom. Some educators, though, argue that we should teach kids about how to use AI responsibly, not ban it. And then others believe that tech is here to stay, and pulling it might leave students unprepared for the workforce. I'm sort of on the latter camp on that one. France banned phones in schools for kids under 15. Finland, which is known for their top education system, actually limits screen time in early grades. So would you support a ban on classroom devices for kids until college? Or do you think that that is overreacting? So the teacher's final plea is that we need to bring back what worked, cut off the tech until college. Do you think that she's just burned out maybe? Or is this a warning cry? Is this a canary in the coal mine for education? Are we sacrificing long-term wisdom for short-term convenience? So parents, are you seeing this in your kids? Teachers, are you burned out too? Write to me. Students, do you feel like you're learning anything, or are you just coasting on AI? So maybe some other questions I might have is like, what does literacy mean in an AI world? Can the Constitution be understood by a generation raised on TikToks and shortcuts? Should AI written essays be flagged the same way that plagiarism is? And is it still cheating if the machine does the work? Want to hear your thoughts on that. And let's have a good laugh at CNN being forced to report on the decent inflation numbers.
Wallet. U.S. inflation slowing, I should say, to its lowest rate in more than 4 years. That, according to April's Consumer Price Index report. It's an unexpected and very welcome development that's defying economists' expectations amid President Trump's ongoing trade war. Let's go live right now to CNN business and politics correspondent Vanessa Yurkevich, who's watching all of this in New York. Vanessa, walk us through this morning's report. Where do things stand?
Encouraging signs, Wolf. Inflation continuing to move in the right direction, cooling on an annual basis to 2.3%.
Wallet.
Yeah, they hate reporting that good news. Homeschool mother Kate Fanning says she's at the library and she sees kids after school on their computers when they're supposed to be doing research projects. 3 years ago, someone wrote in when they texted the show and said that 3 years ago, I wrote a note in cursive to a 17-year-old at work. He could not read it. The funny thing is, he had the same second grade teacher when I was in school. Enjoy the bonus content. Judge Andrew Napolitano coming up next. Is it the right move for Donald Trump to accept a gift of a plane, $400 million plane from Qatar, and Trump repudiates the neocons in the Middle East on his tour? We'll talk to Judge Napolitano about that when we get back on the Wake Up America show on the 4 Liberty Network. They don't need a warrant. They don't need a charge. They don't even need a reason. All they need is your stuff. Welcome to civil asset forfeiture, where the government can take your property and walk away without ever proving you did anything wrong. Imagine this. You're driving home, minding your own business, when suddenly law enforcement pulls you over. They find a large sum of cash in your car. No drugs, no weapons, no evidence of a crime. Yet they seize your money, suspecting it might be connected to illegal activity. You protest, but it doesn't matter. You're never charged, never convicted, but your property is gone. Welcome to the world of civil asset forfeiture. Civil asset forfeiture is one of the most abused, unaccountable tools in the American government's playbook. And now we've got a new case that shines a spotlight on just how corrupt it's become. In Macoupin County, Illinois, a former office manager for the state's attorney's office, Jacqueline Walker, was just charged with theft and fraud. Why? Because she allegedly stole over $100,000 directly from the county's drug asset forfeiture fund. That's right. The fund meant to fight crime became a slush fund for a government employee. For months, she allegedly transferred thousands into her personal account. Think about that. Money seized by the government from citizens, now quietly rerouted to a bureaucrat's bank account. If that's not emblematic of the system, I don't know what is. But don't be fooled into thinking this is some isolated case. This is the rule, not the exception. Civil asset forfeiture allows police and prosecutors to seize your property without charging you with a crime, and in most cases, the agency that seizes it gets to keep the profits. That's not justice. That's piracy with paperwork. Look at Tanaha, Texas. Police there were caught pulling over out-of-town drivers, especially minorities, and seizing cash and valuables under the threat of jail time, even when no charges were ever filed. Victims were told to sign waivers forfeiting their property or risk arrest. Not only were they innocent, they were extorted by the state. In Philadelphia, law enforcement seized over $64 million in assets in just over a decade. The district attorney's office used the proceeds to fund their own salaries. They were literally paying themselves with the property they took from citizens, many of whom were never convicted of anything. And then there's the law itself.
In 2024, the Supreme Court ruled that the government isn't even required to give you a prompt hearing to get your property back. That's right. They can take your car, your cash, even your home, and hold on to it for months or years before you ever get a chance to challenge it. And if you want to fight back, you're going to need a lawyer. But if your seized assets are your only savings, good luck affording one. This isn't just bad policy, it's a direct assault on the presumption of innocence. In civil forfeiture cases, the burden of proof is flipped. You have to prove your property wasn't connected to a crime, not the other way around. That's not justice. That's guilty until proven innocent, with a dash of highway robbery. And make no mistake, this system creates a perverse incentive. When departments depend on seizures to pad their budgets, they're not protecting and serving, they're hunting and harvesting. This is the same government that tells you it needs more oversight over your bank account. The same people who say privacy is dangerous, and yet they have zero problem taking your stuff, no charges necessary, and blowing it on whatever they want, sometimes literally stealing it outright, like we just saw in Illinois. There is no transparency, there is no accountability, and there's no excuse. The solution? End civil asset forfeiture as we know it. Require a conviction before property is seized permanently. End the financial incentives that turn police into revenue agents. Restore the idea that property is sacred, not a government piggy bank. This country was founded on the idea that your home, your possessions, your life are your own, not subject to seizure by kings or redcoats or bureaucrats in budget meetings. The founders wrote the Fourth Amendment for exactly this kind of abuse, unreasonable searches and seizures with no accountability. If we let this continue, we're not just losing our money, we're losing our liberty. Thanks for watching. Stay loud, stay principled, and don't let them convince you that your property is theirs to take. See you next time. When the Founding Fathers dreamed of liberty, they forgot one thing: coffee. Introducing Founding Flavors Coffee, the brew that built America, and the brew that's fueling a new revolution, one kitchen at a time. Small batch roasted, Patriot approved, and disappearing faster than a redcoat at Yorktown. Don't get left behind, soldier. Real patriots are starting their mornings with Founding Flavors. And trust us, freedom tastes better with a fresh cup in your hand. Stop drinking those tyrant brews who take your money and don't support your values. Stocks are limited, demand is booming, and your morning deserves a taste of liberty. Order now at forlibertyshop.com before the next shipment gets signed, sealed, and sold out. Founding Flavors Coffee, the official brew of morning rebellions everywhere. Get yours at forlibertyshop.com.
Are you tired of the strange radioactive effects of leftist culture? Do you ever wonder what happened to good old-fashioned American values? Well, fear no more, because there's a new force fighting back against the cultural rot of today. Introducing Culturama, a right-of-center talk show that's taking back the future today. Hosted by none other than blonde bombshell herself, Daniela Pensack. She's not just talking, she's taking culture back. With sharp takes, brilliant guests, and a few surprises along the way. Tune in to
I thought it was a beautiful gesture. Now, there are those that say we shouldn't be accepting gifts to the Defense Department. And I would say only a stupid person would say that. Why wouldn't we do that? And so it helps us out because we'll have a relatively new plane instead of having 40-year-old planes. These planes are 40 years old, and that's not representative of our country.
Okay. Only a stupid person would think that the Department of Defense shouldn't accept gifts. What about people who know the story about the Trojan horse, or maybe even more recent history? Does anybody know the story about the relations with the Soviet Union when the détente began, and that we had the Soviet Union build our embassy in Moscow, and it turns out that the whole place was bugged? Does anybody remember that? Some I don't know. Maybe you know what? Maybe I am a stupid person. Maybe we're the idiots. You know what? Let's get the biggest, maybe the guy who's a constitutional lawyer who hosts a huge podcast, Judging Freedom. Maybe who's written dozens of books, constitutional lawyer, sat on the bench, TV shows out the wazoo. Maybe he's the idiot. Maybe we're the dumb guys. Judge Andrew Napolitano joining us live right now. Maybe we don't know anything, Judge. We don't know history. We don't know the law. We don't know the Constitution. I get called stupid all the time, Judge. I'm sure you probably do too for people who disagree with you. You know what? Are we the stupid people? Maybe. Good morning, Judge.
Well, good morning, Austin. It's a pleasure to be on with you, no matter what they say about us and no matter what we're talking about. The plane is a little troublesome. I mean, we have a military and financial relationship with Doha in which assets are exchanged all the time. One of the biggest bases in the Middle East, we built at our expense in Doha, at which local people are employed. They own the earth underneath the base. We own the base. There's a swap of equipment, material, and human beings to protect it all the time. So it would not be that unusual if they were to give us a plane. What would be shocking and profoundly unusual and certainly not ethical is for a government official to have that plane after leaving office, no matter what legal mechanism was established for the true ownership. In this case, it would be the Trump Library Foundation, which would be controlled by Trump. It's the same as deeding that plane to Donald J. Trump personally or to the Trump organization, his umbrella organization. I'm talking about after he leaves the White House, because they're not stupid. There's a quid pro quo for this stuff. And the quid pro quo is not going to be revealed to the public. God only knows what it is. In terms of the $400 million plane, it will cost $1 billion with a B to retrofit it. The plane has to be stripped down almost to just its basic foundations in order to outfit it for Air Force One. That will take about 2 years. So Trump's not going to get much ability to use this thing. But if I were Trump, given the reputation that he has for loosey-goosey business deals, I wouldn't go near this thing.
I wouldn't, just because I saw what happened with the Israelis and the pagers in the Middle East. So I wouldn't be accepting technology from people in the Middle East just for national defense reasons. But here's how Ann Coulter, our old friend Ann, put it. And because of her tweet, Grover Cleveland is now trending, which I wish he was trending because people were reading about why he was such a great president because he vetoed so many bills. But nevertheless, Grover Cleveland is trending this morning because here's what Ann Coulter said. She said, "I can't wait for the press to find out about France's so-called gift of the Statue of Liberty, accepted in 1886 by then President Grover Cleveland." Does she have a point, Judge?
Just no point whatsoever. Grover Cleveland didn't take the Statue of Liberty home with him after he left office. But she's a character. I love her. Yeah. She's great for these absurd comparisons that make you think. She probably agrees with you and me on Grover Cleveland. Mm. So I don't know where this thing is going to go. A lot of Republicans in the Congress, one you and I admire, three you and I can't stand, but the four of them are speaking out loudly against this. Rand Paul has condemned it. So have, believe it or not, Lindsey Graham, Tom Cotton, and Ted Cruz. Mm. So I don't know where it's going to go because the emoluments clause, which prohibits foreign gifts directly to the president, has an exception in it if authorized by Congress. So if he goes to Congress, he's not going to get what he wants. I don't think he'll go to Congress. He doesn't go to Congress for any of the efforts he's made to recast the federal government. Why would he go to Congress over this plane? He's yet to propose a single piece of legislation in Congress, and he's been in office for more than 100 days. but he signed 260 executive orders, the overwhelming majority of which are unconstitutional because they purport to regulate areas of governance not given by the Constitution to the executive branch.
Judge, the president is in the Middle East on what some are calling a peace tour. Here is a little snippet of a speech that he gave yesterday in Riyadh. He said, "Before our eyes, a new generation of leaders is transcending the ancient, tired divisions of the past and forging a future where the Middle East is defined by commerce, not by chaos." And he talks about creeds building cities together, not bombing each other out of existence. We don't want that. And he says, and it's crucial for the wider world to note this great transformation has not come from Western interventionists flying people in beautiful planes, giving you lectures on how to live and how to govern your own affairs. No, the gleaming marvel of Riyadh and Abu Dhabi were not created by the so-called nation builders, neocons, or liberal nonprofits. He says that they were built by commerce, by nation builders, not nation wreckers, not by the interventionists, not by the neocons. Kind of a shocking speech. If you had told us that a president would said that 10, 15 years ago, Judge, we would have thought that perhaps Ron or Rand Paul would have been president to say something like that. What are your thoughts?
Well, I agree with nearly everything he said. He's wrong about who built those skyscrapers. They were built by tyrants who stole assets from people.
True, Judge. Exactly. Yes.
You
and
know,
a lot of slave labor.
He's sitting next to Mohammed bin Salman, who had a political opponent butchered while still alive in the Saudi embassy in Istanbul, and he sat with al-Jilani, who, according to Scott Ritter, killed Americans with his bare hands in Afghanistan, and who until a month ago, Marco Rubio's State Department had a $10 million bounty on his head. So he's got to be careful who he associates with. Nevertheless, his theory about American interventionism was shockingly refreshing and welcome from your perspective and mine. But he's full of contradictions. Same guy that just wasted $1 billion trying to kill Houthis until Hegseth told him, we're not getting anywhere. They're still out there. And then Trump said, all right, let's forget it. Well, we'll forget about the people we killed, forget about the apartment buildings we demolished, forget about the civilians we slaughtered, forget about the 3 jets that fell off the aircraft carrier and are sitting at the bottom of the ocean. Forget about the $1 billion we wasted. It's only $1 billion. It's only borrowed in the taxpayer's name. Don't worry about it, Pete. So I'm not usually sarcastic, but he's not a credible person. He'll say the opposite tomorrow of what he said today.
I just can't help but wonder, though, if that isn't what he really believes, but if there isn't, I remember there was this comedian, Judge, from back in the 90s. I can't remember. It was like Bill something. And he talked about what happens when you become the U.S. president. And it was a joke, but he says that as soon as you become the president of the United States, that they take you to a room somewhere and they show you footage of Dealey Plaza, but from the angle of the grassy knoll. And then they say to you, unless you do what we tell you to do, Mr. President, then this is the fate that will await you. Essentially, that these presidents are in these scenarios, all these no-win situations, and certain things unfold, whether or not, I mean, it may be a part of machinations of an evil conspiracy, which a lot of libertarians believe, but it also just might be that their hands are tied in some ways by, the actions and deeds of people that have come before. I mean, that's kind of a meta philosophical view of it.
I don't.
Go ahead.
Look, I don't know who the comedian is. But this is absolutely consistent with what Trump personally and privately told me. I've recounted this story many times. I think even on your show. And that is when he called me at the end of his first term, about a week before Biden was going to be inaugurated, to review with me pardons and commutations he was about to issue, because some of these people were friends of mine, like Bernie Carrick, the former police commissioner here in New York City. I said to him, there's a couple of things you promised me you'd do that you still didn't do. What? What's that? I'll do it. I said, pardon Edward Snowden. Pardon Julian Assange. He goes, consider it done. Of course, they talked him out of that. and reveal the JFK documents. Now, I will tell you what he said to me, which is consistent with what this comedian claims. He said to me, well, Judge, if they showed you what they showed me, you wouldn't reveal the documents either. I said, well, who's they and what did they show you? And he said, well, someday when we're alone, and then he raised his voice, and there aren't 15 people listening to our phone call, I'll tell you. That's all I can give you. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, as you know. I don't like to fuel social media over nonsense, but that is a true and accurate recounting of my conversation with him. This is January of 2021.
Judge, do you have any concern about like the relationship that has been developing between Qatar and so many people on the right? I mean, there's all these accusations, speaking of conspiracy theories, there's all of these accusations that Qatar is making this play in the United States, you know, buying influencers, spending money here in the United States, now trying to gift the president of the United States. I mean, there is a lot of attempts. I mean, it kind of gets laughed off because of how the left ran this Russian collusion hoax for a number of years. But there are foreign governments that run influence operations within the United States and try and influence our politicians and influence our influencers in order to try and get their agenda across here. I mean, some people, they kind of laugh at it or scorn the concept because of how the left treated, you know, Russiagate, but it's a fact. I mean, it's been going on since the Soviet Union, hasn't it?
It's a standard operating procedure for the Qataris. I mean, 2 or 3 of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's senior-most aides are being investigated by Shin Bet, which is the Israeli rough equivalent of the FBI, for being bribed by the Qataris. And the evidence is real and substantial, so substantial that 2 of them are still in jail. They can't even get bail because the evidence was reviewed by an Israeli judge. This would tell you that there are serious efforts either to bribe or to influence the Prime Minister of Israel by giving away gifts. So the first question that Congress should ask is, what's the quid pro quo for this $400 million plane? And why do you want a plane now that you can't use until the 3rd or 4th year of your presidency? Why don't you just tell Boeing to speed up what they're supposedly have been making for you since you ordered this in the 1st year of your presidency?
Judge,
I'm far more concerned about habeas corpus than I am this. Trump's reputation for being less than ethical doesn't seem to bother people. He's Teflon when it comes to that. He's effectively made himself Teflon by his personality and actually political brilliance.
I'm glad you brought that up, Judge. I was actually just getting ready to transition to the habeas corpus question. I'm going to kind of go down a little bit of a rabbit hole here with this one. I hope you will bear with me, please, and the audience will bear with me as I set up this series of questions and this discussion of the topic of habeas corpus, because I want to tie it into modern politics, Judge. It's quite often lately that I see many people who lament how Pat Buchanan was treated back in the 1980s and 90s. And there appears to be, because of the rise of what you and I would call progressive republicanism, right? The rise of the Teddy Roosevelt wing of the Republican Party. A rise in renewal of interest in Pat Buchanan's policies, mostly because of a desire for isolationism and a resistance to international free trade, right? They call people like you and I globalists because we believe in limited government when it comes to tariffs and tax, just like we are on every other tax. Nevertheless, what's fascinating is that from this group, this wing of the Republican Party, Judge, you will frequently hear them opining on the Civil War to argue things like tariffs were responsible, the tariffs were a major cause for the reason of the Civil War, which I find fascinating because, of course, they are big fans of tariffs when Trump does them. But then on the question of habeas corpus, there are many people, Judge, And it's a fascinating phenomenon. Many people judge on the right, this Pat Buchanan right, the rise of the populists, of the progressive Republicans, who will say that Abraham Lincoln was a tyrant because of his dismissal of habeas corpus and his jailing of journalists. Maybe a talking point thing that you would say quite frequently, Judge. And yet they will have those views because, of course, they're very pro-Southern. They will have those views of the terrible tariffs that were put against the South. They will have those views of Abraham Lincoln as a tyrant because of habeas corpus. But when Trump does it, it's okay. Do you find this fascinating, Judge? I mean, it's a political question to some extent, but we're talking about the policies of things like tariffs and things like habeas corpus, which, of course, Abraham Lincoln dismissed. Yeah. You see where I'm going with this?
I follow you. This gaggle of the Republican Party is... they don't seem to be anchored in first principles. They just seem to be anchored in either a fear or an adulation of Donald Trump. Obviously, I agree with them on Lincoln. Lincoln was a monster. I don't need to go through all the reasons, but the suspension of the writ of habeas corpus, which eventually was done by Congress, and eventually then was undone by the Supreme Court because of the requirement in the Constitution of invasion or rebellion, which did not occur in the North. Most of the newspaper editors that Lincoln arrested were in Ohio and Michigan, where there was no violent activity during the Civil War. And then, of course, when the war was over, thanks to a newspaper publisher named Milligan, I forget his first name, who was about to be executed by the military and handwrote a petition, which his jailers put in the mail and arrived at the Supreme Court. We have one of the greatest cases in history called In re Milligan, in which a court largely appointed by Abraham Lincoln demolished from a constitutional perspective, his efforts to suspend the writ of habeas corpus. I mean, habeas corpus means that if you are arrested, you have the right to be brought before a judge and know the charges against you and the evidence against you, and the judge has to certify that these are valid charges and that there is real evidence against you. And if the answer to either of those questions is no, then the judge releases you. Habeas corpus is taken so seriously that most judges, your humble correspondent among them, if they received a petition for habeas corpus in the middle of the day, in the middle of another trial, would stop the trial and review the habeas corpus petition, lest an innocent human being spend 1 minute more confined than the law justified. Now, FDR suspended the writ of habeas corpus, and in one of the lowest depths to which the Supreme Court ever sunk, it permitted it against Japanese Americans in World War II. Japanese Americans, human beings born in America, but of Japanese ancestry. This has since been reversed by subsequent Supreme Courts, condemned by subsequent presidents, condemned by subsequent Congresses, and compensated by Congress in 1980. When George W. Bush attempted to impose or to suspend habeas corpus, the Supreme Court said no. The president can't do it, only the Congress can. That's in re Milligan. When Congress, under the leadership of Lindsey Graham at the time, attempted to suspend habeas corpus, the Supreme Court said no, because the precursor to suspending habeas corpus is invasion or rebellion, and Congress has defined invasion or rebellion as a state of affairs such that the federal courts can't hold sessions. The judges can't get to the courtrooms. The lawyer in the argument for the Supreme Court said, well, I was in federal court in Lower Manhattan on 9/12, the day after 9/11. So obviously the invasion or rebellion definition does not apply here, and the Supreme Court agreed and invalidated the congressional suspension of habeas corpus. So that's the basic history in a thumbnail. FDR got away with it. Lincoln and George W. Bush did not. FDR's condemnations didn't come until after he was dead and World War II was over.
How do you think that this Supreme Court might weigh in, Judge, on the issue of habeas corpus if Trump attempts to suspend it for illegal immigrants?
I would think they would prevent it and say a plain reading of the wording of the Constitution and the structure of the Constitution, because habeas corpus is in Article 1, which is the Congress, says that only Congress can do it. That's what I would think the Supreme Court will do. Gorsuch and the Chief Justice joining the three liberals.
In regards to the illegal immigration question, Judge, the argument that's being made is that there have been so many waves of illegals into this country that the federal government does not have the resources to enforce the law as they claim it is written and to manage immigration in an orderly way. How would you respond to that?
They don't. They don't have the resource. You look at the Constitution, immigration is a state issue. The feds glommed it to themselves in 1886. You ready for the name of this law? The Chinese Exclusion Act.
Yes.
Could you imagine naming a statute the Italian Exclusion Act? I mean, but it was a different era, a different time. The feds claimed this authority themselves. The Supreme Court said, okay. Now, if the feds don't want to hold hearings, they should change the statutes. They'll still have a constitutional problem because of the Fifth Amendment. But Trump chose to use the Alien Enemies Act, which expressly provides for a hearing. Even the one judge who yesterday in Pennsylvania said, okay, we are under, did you know we're under invasion or rebellion? This is what a federal judge found, that the Venezuelan gangs are the moral and legal equivalent of a Venezuelan military. Even the American intelligence community did not put cold water on that. Nevertheless, she found we are under invasion or rebellion. Even she said, however, you got to have a hearing because that's what the statute requires. There are statutes that don't require hearings, but he chose to use this one.
It's a fascinating phenomenon, Judge. And unfortunately, I think that, we just live in a time where there's just so much the regular illiteracy, let alone constitutional illiteracy. It's really just strongman theory that we seem to live under these days. And it's been that way since Abraham Lincoln, unfortunately. Judge, who do you have coming up on your excellent show, Judging Freedom?
I have Scott Horton from antiwar.com at 11 today. I have Professor Glenn Deason from the University of South Norway, who's so excellent on these crazy European elites. And I have Phil Giraldi, the ex-CIA that George Bush threw out of his office when he said Saddam Hussein did not have weapons of mass destruction. Tomorrow, Professor John Mearsheimer. Yesterday, Colonel Douglas McGregor. Monday, Professor Jeffrey Sachs. So I have all the heavyweights.
Judge, thank you so much for your time and your generosity in joining us every Wednesday here on this show. I highly recommend everyone visit your show, Judging Freedom, on YouTube. Download it on any of your mobile devices, and of course, read your weekly column at judgenap.com. Judge, bless you. Thank you very much. Oh, hey, one last quick question. What do you think of the new Pope?
I think more of him the more I hear of him. He was not my first choice. My heart sank when I heard the name Robert, because there's only two Roberts in the College of Cardinals, and the other one was my choice. And then I thought, I know this guy's an American, but nobody ever heard of him. Since he has assumed the papacy, he's been fabulous, and my traditionalist friends are ecstatic.
Wow.
You'll soon see Latin masses in every Catholic church in the country, and the faithful will flock to them.
Absolutely.
Gotta go. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. Have a great day. We appreciate Judge Napolitano very much. Wonderful conversation. All right. So, Wither the Woke Right. Every time I open up my my X account and I see people screaming at each other about the woke right. What is the woke right? We're going to find out with Brian Eskow. He's searching for his political identity. Maybe not so much anymore. He's a little bit more kind of center right. Let's talk to Brian Escow about the woke right. Whither the woke right? We'll be right back on the Wake Up America show on the 4 Liberty Network.
They don't need a warrant. They don't need a charge. They don't even need a reason. All they need is your stuff. Welcome to civil asset forfeiture, where the government can take your property and walk away without ever proving you did anything wrong. Imagine this. You're driving home, minding your own business, when suddenly, law enforcement pulls you over. They find a large sum of cash in your car. No drugs, no weapons, no evidence of a crime. Yet they seize your money, suspecting it might be connected to illegal activity. You protest, but it doesn't matter. You're never charged, never convicted, but your property is gone. Welcome to the world of civil asset forfeiture. Civil asset forfeiture is one of the most abused, unaccountable tools in the American government's playbook. And now we've got a new case that shines a spotlight on just how corrupt it's become. In Macoupin County, Illinois, a former office manager for the state's attorney's office, Jacqueline Walker, was just charged with theft and fraud. Why? Because she allegedly stole over $100,000 directly from the county's drug asset forfeiture fund. That's right. The fund meant to fight crime became a slush fund for a government employee. For months, she allegedly transferred thousands into her personal account. Think about that. Money seized by the government from citizens, now quietly rerouted to a bureaucrat's bank account. If that's not emblematic of the system, I don't know what is. But don't be fooled into thinking this is some isolated case. This is the rule, not the exception. Civil asset forfeiture allows police and prosecutors to seize your property without charging you with a crime, and in most cases, the agency that seizes it gets to keep the profits. That's not justice. That's piracy with paperwork. Look at Tanaha, Texas. Police there were caught pulling over out-of-town drivers, especially minorities, and seizing cash and valuables under the threat of jail time, even when no charges were ever filed. Victims were told to sign waivers forfeiting their property or risk arrest. Not only were they innocent, they were extorted by the state. In Philadelphia, law enforcement seized over $64 million in assets in just over a decade. The district attorney's office used the proceeds to fund their own salaries. They were literally paying themselves with the property they took from citizens, many of whom were never convicted of anything. And then there's the law itself. In 2024, the Supreme Court ruled that the government isn't even required to give you a prompt hearing to get your property back. That's right. They can take your car, your cash, even your home, and hold on to it for months or years before you ever get a chance to challenge it. And if you want to fight back, you're going to need a lawyer. But if your seized assets are your only savings, good luck affording one. This isn't just bad policy, it's a direct assault on the presumption of innocence. In civil forfeiture cases, the burden of proof is flipped. You have to prove your property wasn't connected to a crime, not the other way around. That's not justice. That's guilty until proven innocent, with a dash of highway robbery. And make no mistake, this system creates a perverse incentive. When departments depend on seizures to pad their budgets, they're not protecting and serving, they're hunting and harvesting. This is the same government that tells you it needs more oversight over your bank account. The same people who say privacy is dangerous, and yet they have zero problem taking your stuff, no charges necessary, and blowing it on whatever they want, sometimes literally stealing it outright like we just saw in Illinois. There is no transparency, there is no accountability, and there's no excuse. The solution? End civil asset forfeiture as we know it. Require a conviction before property is seized permanently. End the financial incentives that turn police into revenue agents. Restore the idea that property is sacred, not a government piggy bank. This country was founded on the idea that your home, your possessions, your life are your own, not subject to seizure by kings or redcoats or bureaucrats in budget meetings. The founders wrote the Fourth Amendment for exactly this kind of abuse, unreasonable searches and seizures with no accountability. If we let this continue, we're not just losing our money, we're losing our liberty. Thanks for watching. Stay loud, stay principled, And don't let them convince you that your property is theirs to take. See you next time.
To do with
Trump's
reckless
even if
mismanagement.
James Lindsay himself doesn't realize it. James Lindsay's crusade against the woke right is over, even if James Lindsay himself doesn't realize it. He has lost the argument firmly and soundly, and I doubt that he will admit this, and so he will continue, like some sort of Japanese World War II soldier, to fight an imaginary war that has already been lost. As you can see from Jack Posobiec here, he points out that the term Buchanan right should be seen as a compliment, not an insult. Buchanan's focus on American sovereignty, nationalism, and standing against corporate interests is pure MAGA. The H-1B debate was a prime example of the protection of American workers, so if anything, Buchanan was ahead of his time, and I think he's completely correct about this.
Woke right, Buchanan right, National Socialist right, National Conservative right. I don't know who's right or who's wrong. You know what? I need someone else to give me my opinion, but in their voice. So in times like these, I rely on people like my next guest. Just kidding. Brian Eskow joins us live this morning from San Diego, California. Sunny San Diego. Brian Eskow is the host of his own podcast, Searching for Political Identity. Maybe he's not searching so much anymore. He's a little bit more center-right. Maybe he'll join the woke right when he realizes that Adolf Hitler was right about everything. Just kidding. Brian joins us live on the Wake Up to America show. Good morning, Brian. Welcome to the show.
Good morning. So great to be here. Thank you. I do like the Yay song. I got to be honest. Musically, I think it's a brilliant composition and a real piece of artistry, a real expression of sadness and pain. Horrible, but I don't think I'll be joining the woke right. But
so
I can respect people.
For our audience who doesn't know, Kanye West wrote a song called, I think it's just called Heil Hitler. But you say it was a sad. Right. You say it's a sad song. It's a good song musically, but you say, why is it sad?
Well, I just think look at this guy's pain. I mean, it's a real expression of pain and illness, and it's very sad. And a guy who has such talent. Look at a guy like Nick Fuentes too, who I see clips all the time, and I go, man, this guy, what a talented analyst. Too bad he's got this infection. He's got this problem, and so it's sad when you see someone without talent with that affliction, but someone with talent, it's even more sad to me.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, the woke right, I mean, it's more than just, people like Nick Fuentes or Kanye West, essentially. People are trying to sort of apply this term to a broader group of people on the right. And this insult seems to really get under people's skin. If you call people a Nazi or a fascist or a racist or whatever, they kind of roll their eyes and they laugh. But if you call them woke right, they will devote hours and hours of podcasts and articles to defend themselves from being called woke right. So I guess my first question here is like, how do you define woke right? Is it a thing? And let's just sort of extrapolate from there for me. Would you mind?
Sure. So the first thing is I don't have this Buchanan knowledge context that people are tying into the debate. So this Pat Buchanan's influence and his relevance to the term is lost upon me. I only know what I know. I only know that I was paying no attention at all to politics until I was 28 years old. I went into law school. When I was 32 years old, I was in my final year because I went at night, did the 4-year program, and I took 2 critical race theory infused electives. Why did I do that? Because I'm my father's son, a liberal home, always interested in improving the world, improving race relations, just liberal Jews, the connection between the progressive black movements and progressive Jews. It's part of the fabric. And so that's the way I was raised. And I said, well, now, by the way, I wish I studied business law or something that I wish I wouldn't have done this, honestly, but I did. And I learned a lot about critical race theory, and it completely informed the next few years of my life. Started a podcast. It's called Searching for Political Identity. And now I'm an expert on the woke right. So you got to understand what the woke left is first. And very quickly, just the bullet points is, to me, this is how I look at it. Not saying it's the be all end all, but to be woke is to embrace CRT. CRT, as I learned, is anti-objectivity, which means society is not objective. In other words, AKA anti-objectivity means it's a white man's world. It really is a white man's world. So being woke might have made sense 100 years ago. I was looking last night. Leadbelly, the blues artist, said "Stay woke" in 1928. Perhaps it made sense then. But the question is, does it make sense now? Do we have a white man's world society really today? That's what it's all about. That's when the hairs went up on the back of my neck in those classes. And I go, really? So either I'm living in the bubble of privilege, truly, and I am, a poster child for their case, or my instinct is right when I say, no, man, this has outlived its purpose and it's now festered into this horrible thing. So being woke is saying it's not, it is a white man's world, even though we have the Civil Rights Act on the books. The laws on the books say it's colorblind, but the reality on the streets is it's not. So it's a white man's world. We got to change that. That's CRT. So if you apply that,
go ahead.
Well, just to flip it then, so the woke right is, I look at it as a reaction because now, of course, white supremacy predated CRT, but, wasn't it dying? Wasn't it gone? Wasn't it really just lying there? I would say that this infusion of CRT, after it expired, the need for it expired, just inflamed people's sense of racial identity. And now you have this reactionary movement on the right, which is to say, you know what? America is for white people. And now, therefore, you have to get the hell out of it. That's the woke right to me. And by the way, we can blame the Jews for a lot of this, for a lot of that. So it's not necessarily directly about the Jews. It is about racial power, social structures, hegemony in this country. You know what? It is white. I wrote this note. The great song from Barbie, wasn't it Billie Eilish? Who was I made for? Great movie. Who was America made for? That's what CRT wokeness is all about. And it's just the difference is how you approach it. The CRT, the woke left wants to dismantle it. The woke right wants to preserve it. And the way I looked at the political landscape was, you know what? MAGA is the colorblind norm. MAGA is the libertarian movement. You just had Judge Napolitano on. I go, this is the libertarian stuff that I really gravitated to. After learning that stuff, I go, no, what the F? America is for all who embrace its ideals. And that's where I landed, and that's how I saw MAGA. And so I did make the determination before I voted for Trump that the woke right is a very small component. It's a reaction. And I just did the math, and I said, you know what? I'm good here. And that's how I look at it.
Okay. So one of the descriptions, an excellent analysis, Brian, and I'm grateful that you're here with us, especially because it's so much earlier out there on the left coast. But here's a description that I have appropriated for what they are calling the woke right or right-wing wokeness. And what this definition claims is that they appropriate techniques of the illiberal left-wing variety, things like language policing, things like historical revisionism, things like expansive claims of ethnic oppression. But it sort of deploys them in the service of the MAGA coalition, above all white Christian males rather than racial and sexual minorities. So, for example, many of them might be, trumpeting the fact that we're bringing white South Africans here because they're white, not because they're fleeing racial oppression.
Yeah, the only thing that really registered for me was the third one. What was the third one that you said, the third reason?
Language policing, historical revisionism, and expansive claims of ethnic oppression.
Yeah, no, the only thing that rings a bell there for me is a claim of ethnic oppression. You could understand, this is what I said in the video I made back in January, where I thought I was at the forefront of this woke right term. I don't know if I was or not, but in that video, I said, hey, man, I can understand. I just laid out critical race theory. I don't agree with it. I think it's vitriolic. I understand why a white man would be sitting there going, what the hell? I'm under attack. And so I'm going to do. And so the question is, how far do you go with that? And what do you do with that anger? And I certainly do not. I would not join a white, militant group. But you could understand that dynamic. So racial oppression, I would say, I wouldn't rule that out. We are possibly in those waters, and that's why we need to be neutral racially.
Okay. So, I mean,
No, it's not to ignore the problems and the realities. Not to say that people don't have different experiences, but not to embellish it.
Well, would you say though that, like, if you're going to boil it all down into a simple definition, that woke left is the illiberal left and woke right is the illiberal right?
I look at it all about social power structures and how they view society in terms of race relations, because that's the way I learned it. And so I would just say woke left is we have a white power structure and we need to dismantle it. Woke right is we have a dying a dying white power structure and we need to revive it.
Do you kind of, I mean, like being Jewish, like the whole concept of oppression is kind of like coded into your DNA, isn't it?
I'm so glad you said that, because I base my entire brand, for lack of a better term, on this transition from the Democrats. I was always voted for Democrats. Now I voted for Trump. Oh my God, look at me. And it was all informed by this conversation. I became obsessed with this conversation because I studied it, and it was one of the very few things I had exposure to. But as you can tell from the title of my podcast, I've always been on this deeper search for identity. I mean, I used to be my therapist would say, we both know this is a deeper search. I go, no shit, do I really need to be paying you? But being Jewish is the next thing I have to reconcile, and I've started to do it, and it greased the skids to go to Trump, right? Also, but I have to now confront this question of where does the Jewishness tie into my sense of identity and sense of politics, and that's the next step. But it's a
big question, bro. It's a big question because, for example, one of the themes I've been reading about lately is they say either everybody gets to be tribal or nobody does. That was a Nick Fuentes quote. He said everybody gets to be tribal or nobody does. Right? Blacks get to be tribal. Jews get to be tribal. Whites don't get to be tribal. So
that's a good starting argument. I mean, on its face, right there, I go, "Damn!" My first reaction is, "Okay, let me take that seriously. Why not?" And I haven't given too much thought to it, but Vivek says there are two ways to define a state: ethno-nationally, blood and soil, or by values. And I was raised in America, and the formula I'm familiar with is the latter formula, the Vivek formula, the colorblind formula, and so that's what I believe in. And there is an opening there where you can say, well, are you being hypocritical? Why shouldn't white people have a right to an ethno-state? And I would say, I don't know. That's just not how it went down in America. And I don't have a problem with where the colorblind America that people think we were in the 90s, early 2000s, and that we should get back to, so to speak. I don't have a problem with that vision for America. Is it a bit hypocritical? Maybe, but that's just how the cookie crumbled. It's a very interesting topic.
It certainly is. And I mean, I think that, trying to divorce Jews from their ethnicity is, essentially for them calling for a new Holocaust. So in some ways, how do we grapple with the concept of allowing tribalism for some, but not for others? Because when you have white tribalism, it manifests itself in very ugly ways, or it can. Other than, and most people, they immediately go to the Hitler example. But I mean, white tribalism can be a lot more than just Hitler. It can also be the foundation of the creation of the United States. There's a lot of positive things, just like there have been a lot of positive things that have come out of the creation of the Jewish state of Israel. There have been a lot of positive things. And I won't say the United States is an ethno-state. It wasn't founded as one. And if you read the Founding Fathers and the Federalist Papers and the Anti-Federalist Papers, I think that you will come to agree. But there, in terms of white culture, in a sense, or white ethnicity, there really isn't one white culture or one white ethnicity, because you have Irish, you have British, you have Americans, Nords, Swedes, Finlands, Danes, Germans. Like there's multiple ethnicities within them. And then, of course, with Jews, you have Sephardic and you have Ashkenazi, and there's multiple cultures within a culture. I'm more on the side, Brian, of just saying no one should be tribal.
Mm-hmm.
We should all be individualistic because of my own hyper-individualism. But then, of course, I think that if you're a Jew, that's a direct assault on your identity to a large extent,
Exactly.
isn't it?
Here's this guy gravitating towards libertarianism, but also confronting his Jewish identity at the same time. I mean, I thought I was done with the splitting in half, but here I go again. And so this is the next chapter for me. No question about it.
Well, I'll be interested to hear kind of where you end up on that one, Brian, because you know you're one of the few people that I see sort of like grappling with issues honestly and sort of like, you know, trying to take things in rather than just sort of picking a side and then just throwing, you know, curveballs for anybody who disagrees with you. You actually grapple with ideas, which is very rare, and that's why I enjoy our conversations. How's your podcast going, by the way, Brian?
Thank you so much. I've been on a hiatus, you know, with changes, getting married, new job. Wanted to take a little break after 4 years of every week. So currently on a hiatus, but I'm probably going to revive it. Just
I mean, I saw your show yesterday had like 11,000 views over on X. Like 70,000 people saw your post, 11,000 views of your video talking about defying the woke right. That seems to me to have a lot of people interested in what you have to say, Brian. So I hope you take it back up.
Thank you so much. Honor to be here.
Yeah. Anything else that you want to share with our audience before we let you go today?
No, just grateful. That's
okay.
it.
All right. Then Brian Eskow, you could follow him over on X at Brian Eskow. If you won't do your own plugs for you, Brian, then I will do the plugs for you. Follow him at Brian Eskow, that's ESKOW over on X, and check out his archive of shows he did on the woke right and many of his searches for his political identity. Have a good one, Brian. Thanks for getting up so early, and we'll hopefully have you back on again real soon.
You too. Thanks, Austin.
Hand was up.
You said in June of last year, in my meetings with President Biden, I found him to be in command and impressive and wielding influence to make progress on key priorities. But in that same month, Biden apparently did not even recognize George Clooney at a fundraiser. Were you being straight with the American public?
Look, we're just looking forward.
They're just looking forward. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to look into the past.
In our politics lead, President Biden is back on the global stage. This time he's in India for the G20 summit in a public display of diplomacy. A new book goes behind the scenes of the Biden administration, giving us 2 years of insider access to how Mr. Biden has tried to manage his presidency and what he has said behind closed doors about his ability to handle the job. Joining us now is Frank.
Oh, please. You're going to give me this right now, Internet? You're going to give me this? Is that how it's going to be? All right. Well, it's been a great show anyway. It's time for us to go. Thank you, everyone, for all of your support today, financial and otherwise. If you haven't clicked the like button, please do so. We'll look forward to seeing you guys again next week. Don't forget, no show tomorrow or Friday. I'll be in Los Angeles. It's going to be a fantastic trip. I'll tell you guys all about it when I get back on Monday, so make sure that you come back and do it. Watch the archives. Check out some old shows, right? Maybe, check out some of our other stuff. Maybe this weekend is a good weekend to go and spend a little money at the For Liberty shop. What do you say? Head on over to forlibertyshop.com. That's the number 4libertyshop.com. And join us in celebrating the summer of freedom at forlibertyshop.com. The Summer of Freedom collection available now. Tank tops, bikinis, beach towels, tumblers, all the freedom that you can handle at forlibertyshop.com. That's the number 4libertyshop.com. Just exit through the gift shop, guys. And we'll see you on Monday on the Wake Up America show on the 4 Liberty Network.
They don't need a warrant. They don't need a charge. They don't even need a reason. All they need is your stuff. Welcome to civil asset forfeiture, where the government can take your property and walk away without ever proving you did anything wrong. Imagine this. You're driving home, minding your own business, when suddenly, law enforcement pulls you over. They find a large sum of cash in your car. No drugs, no weapons, no evidence of a crime. Yet they seize your money, suspecting it might be connected to illegal activity. You protest, but it doesn't matter. You're never charged, never convicted, but your property is gone. Welcome to the world of civil asset forfeiture. Civil asset forfeiture is one of the most abused, unaccountable tools in the American government's playbook. And now we've got a new case that shines a spotlight on just how corrupt it's become. In Macoupin County, Illinois, a former office manager for the state's attorney's office, Jacqueline Walker, was just charged with theft and fraud. Why? Because she allegedly stole over $100,000 directly from the county's drug asset forfeiture fund. That's right. The fund meant to fight crime became a slush fund for a government employee. For months, she allegedly transferred thousands into her personal account. Think about that. Money seized by the government from citizens, now quietly rerouted to a bureaucrat's bank account. If that's not emblematic of the system, I don't know what is. But don't be fooled into thinking this is some isolated case. This is the rule, not the exception. Civil asset forfeiture allows police and prosecutors to seize your property without charging you with a crime, and in most cases, the agency that seizes it gets to keep the profits. That's not justice. That's piracy with paperwork. Look at Tanaha, Texas. Police there were caught pulling over out-of-town drivers, especially minorities, and seizing cash and valuables under the threat of jail time, even when no charges were ever filed. Victims were told to sign waivers forfeiting their property or risk arrest. Not only were they innocent, they were extorted by the state. In Philadelphia, law enforcement seized over $64 million in assets in just over a decade. The district attorney's office used the proceeds to fund their own salaries. They were literally paying themselves with the property they took from citizens, many of whom were never convicted of anything. And then there's the law itself. In 2024, the Supreme Court ruled that the government isn't even required to give you a prompt hearing to get your property back. That's right. They can take your car, your cash, even your home, and hold on to it for months or years before you ever get a chance to challenge it. And if you want to fight back, you're going to need a lawyer. But if your seized assets are your only savings, good luck affording one. This isn't just bad policy, it's a direct assault on the presumption of innocence. In civil forfeiture cases, the burden of proof is flipped. You have to prove your property wasn't connected to a crime, not the other way around. That's not justice. That's guilty until proven innocent, with a dash of highway robbery. And make no mistake, this system creates a perverse incentive. When departments depend on seizures to pad their budgets, they're not protecting and serving, they're hunting and harvesting. This is the same government that tells you it needs more oversight over your bank account. The same people who say privacy is dangerous, and yet they have zero problem taking your stuff, no charges necessary, and blowing it on whatever they want, sometimes literally stealing it outright like we just saw in Illinois. There is no transparency, there is no accountability, and there's no excuse. The solution? End civil asset forfeiture as we know it. Require a conviction before property is seized permanently. End the financial incentives that turn police into revenue agents. Restore the idea that property is sacred, not a government piggy bank. This country was founded on the idea that your home, your possessions, your life are your own, not subject to seizure by kings or redcoats or bureaucrats in budget meetings. The founders wrote the Fourth Amendment for exactly this kind of abuse, unreasonable searches and seizures with no accountability. If we let this continue, we're not just losing our money, we're losing our liberty. Thanks for watching. Stay loud, stay principled, and don't let them convince you that your property is theirs to take. See you next time.